Greetings! Welcome to the Devlog for hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. We're going to start off as always with a quick sound check. Make sure speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful. So what have we got for you this week? Well, after last week's update, which was exhausting, I decided to have myself a little bit of fun this week, messing around with some stuff in addition to just cleaning up bugs and such. And so what I decided to do is take a look at a number of the existing firearms that are in our collection and see if there weren't some fun variants that could be made from them. And so this is very much the chopped SBR Shorty collection here. So let's take a look at our first one here. We've got two new variations of the DT11 over under. This one's still stocked and has a still pretty short but still sane barrel. Let's shut this one. There we go. Wonderful. Nice and short. And then we have a really, really short version for those of you who don't even want the stock and want something more in the sort of pistol-sized shotgun. Note that obviously, even though these still have a choke on them, much shorter barrel, so you're going to get a much wider spread than the full-length DT11, which is the most choked shotgun in the collection. Wonderful. Put these down there. In other shotguns, for one, I realized that for the 870 I'd completely forgotten that I had a version of the model that had a full-length barrel. So if you're looking for another pump or just another good choked shotgun for shooting at the disc and pot and pumpkin launcher in the friendly 45 range, this will be in the item spawner in the next update. It's a much tighter spread for the buck and such. And of course, we then have, this has been requested a number of times, a version of the 870 Shorty with the stock just trimmed right off of it. Beautiful. Absolutely love this one. Awesome. And of course, once these are all added into the system, into the item spawner, they will also show up in Meat Grinder. And that was part of the sort of logic behind, well, you might be asking, like, Anton, why are you chopping all these guns? And part of the reason is that there's a number of fun guns to interact with and fire that are pretty darn cumbersome in Meat Grinder. And while the full-length versions will still be showing up in the ProcGen table, we'll also now be getting the Shorty showing up. So here is the Seiko 85, essentially obrazed. If you don't know what that means, it's some people like to take a garbage rod, also known as a Mosin Nagant, and then cut like 3/4 of it off. I decided to do the same thing to the Seiko here because it's the one I have. Etc. So yeah, so that'll be in the system. What else? Oh yes, let's see, what's this one? Yes, I did it to the 8400 here as well. I didn't chop the stock because you can totally fold it down. This one's railed, so this actually makes a really, really enjoyable sort of like tight CQB bolt action. So let's etc. Remember also, sometimes if you want to fire these real fast, like if a bot's coming down the hallway, just hold the rifle in your left hand. Etc. Hopefully, that car alarm that was just going off did not make it too difficult to hear what I was saying there. So we got that. We got a chopped Model 8. I don't know if anyone has even done this in real life, but it seemed like a firearm with a form factor that'd be really enjoyable to have as a Shorty, and I wanted to make sure I had at least one clip-fed Shorty for those who enjoy them. Etc. Let's run one more through there. See how hard it is to aim with such a shortened sight picture. Oh, not too bad. Not too bad. Well, we are at 10 meters, so it isn't exactly that difficult. And then the last thing by user request is a number of folks have been like, can you please have a version of the 552 with some rails on it? So here you go, 552, top rail, side rails. Helps to actually charge the gun, etc. So there you have it. This will also be going in the item spawner. So these are probably not getting pushed tonight. As I think I'd mentioned before, we're going to be doing a beta branch with H3 now. So the next sort of full update is going to be probably at the end of the month, but in between now and then, I'll be pushing a couple different betas, and the next beta will have these in. I'm not doing it quite yet because I still have to do all the menial work of taking a picture of each gun and putting them in the item spawner and stitching together their data files. But once that's taken care of, these will all be accessible as new toys, and I will add them to the Meat Grinder ProcGen chart. So now that we've taken a look at all this mess, let's jump out of VR and talk about a couple of the other things that I'm working on and thinking about.
Yo! So we're back out of VR, so let's talk about what else is going on this month. So beyond, adding new toys here and there are two other important sort of systemic things with the game that I'll be working on. The first one still relates to the sort of asset bundles and async loading system that was added in the last update. It accomplished its primary goal, which was to load the game faster, get you in faster, and eliminate the controller glitch in doing so. The problem is that, and I wasn't aware of this ahead of time, compressed asset bundles can't be what's called diffed by Steam. And what that basically means is, let's say I've got a big package, a big file that has a whole bunch of firearms, their sounds, their textures, etc., and I upload that to Steam for you to download for the game. Now someone comments a day later and goes, "Oh, this little bit on this firearm doesn't have a texture on it. Something got messed up." And I go in and I fix that, push another version of the game out. Steam is smart enough to know that only a tiny thing in that whole big bundle of firearms changed, and it only uploads that difference and you download that difference. It can't do this if those asset bundles are what are called LZ4 compressed, which is what we did in part to get the build size of the game down smaller. Should have realized it ahead of time that this would be a problem, but whoops! So essentially what I'm going to be doing on the beta branch this month, probably either the next update I push to the beta branch or the one after, is I'm going to change the asset bundles to be just using sort of standard zip compression. Basically. So the game will be a bit larger on disk again. It should still load much faster than, say, 2 versions ago. I'm going to do some speed tests with folks in the community to see if it's an acceptable change, because right now having them LZ4 compressed and essentially having to ship a 2 gig update every time I change a little thing with a gun obviously ties my hands for rapid iteration, which has been a critical part of H3 as a project for the past year and a half. So it's something I have to fix, I have to figure out, so I'll be doing that. The second thing I'm going to do, and I don't know which one of these I'm going to do first, because this obviously is a big headache one, is I'm going to be upgrading the game to Unity 5.6. It's running on 550p3 right now. And the reason I need to do this is basically 3 categories of things. One of them is there's some problems with the occlusion culling that are supposed to be fixed in 5.6. You'll notice in Meat Grinder, in certain random moments, if your flashlight will just turn off. It'll just the screen will go black if your head's exactly in a specific position. This is an occlusion culling bug that apparently was fixed in beta 10 of 5.6. Fingers fucking crossed. So hopefully that fixes it. Second is the ability to embed video more efficiently was added in 5.6. And I want to do this for the new user experience as well as embedding specific tutorials eventually for using specific firearms, some advanced technique stuff, etc. Just so that you can actually see that stuff in game instead of having to come out and load YouTube, etc. And then the third thing is that 5.6 has MSAA and HDR support being able to be used at the same time. And so what that means for the layperson is that right now I use MSAA in H3, which is anti-aliasing. It's what smooths edges on geometry. It's basically required. It's non-negotiable in VR unless you're super sampling the hell out of the frame. The problem is that up until 5.6, using that has been mutually exclusive to high dynamic range buffers. So the ability to have things that are brighter than 1.0 white and being able to have, that nice cinematic tone mapping that we associate visually with a sort of next gen game. And so I'll be able to actually have that in. It will mean that I'll probably have to retweak the lighting in almost every scene as I progressively engage that. Thankfully, I can do it one scene at a time. And observe the effects and make sure it's what I want and what's right for the scene. I'm probably not going to do any dynamic eye adaptation because your eye in an HMD is already doing that to a certain extent, so it feels weird to replicate that sort of faux effect, but we'll see. So yeah, so that's basically going to be the month's projects in addition to the sort of long-term work that I'm doing for the big World War II firearm update. Yeah. And then one other thing I wanted to just sort of talk about that's still an ongoing process, because a couple folks have asked, like, hey, what about meats? Are you still going to be adding more sequences and things like that? I absolutely plan to. It's listed in the game as a preview because I still feel that it's a draft of a lot of that functionality. I think from a design standpoint, some of it works and some of it super doesn't work. The target variety is great. The way that they can work together is really enjoyable. Having sort of mutators like it has to come out of the holster and things like that all works how I hoped it did. But I think in the process of trying to have as much about your performance in a sequence factor into your score. So things like where you hit targets, how far those targets are away, how much time you had left over at the end of each wave, I effectively made the scoring rubric completely opaque. There's no, a number of people said, the nice thing about modular ranges, I hit the bull, it's 10 points. I hit the edge, it's 1 point. Like, it's very easy to make those intuitive decisions in terms of what targets are worth shooting in what period of time. And most of that is very opaque in meats. So I think the solution is going to be from how the game in that mode works is sort of separating out some of that scoring data so that you can actually see, like, oh, I hit the targets and scored this many points. This was my total time for the whole run relative to like a maximum time or the fastest anyone has completed it, and actually make those more transparent to the user so that they can work on how they're doing and their performance of it. That's going to be a longer term thing because there's sort of two other sides that don't involve me, importantly, about how that mode is going to be developed over the next couple months. One of it I think I've mentioned before is that some music is being composed by a friend of mine, Joe. That's going to be fantastic. Really, it's exactly what you want for that type of target experience, and it's of a quality that it is pushing me to raise the production values of that mode across the board. And the second is that a much better scene is going to be built for it. That's going to be, in many ways, a sort of showpiece environment for the game. And is not going to be the thrown together environment that Anton made in a day that is currently in that scene. So those are all longer term things that are being done with that mode while I sort of redesign the mechanics of it and spend the requisite time to really think about the numerical challenge design for it. I also want to, when as I update it and adjust it, have more modes that are about radial engagement instead of just narrow cone engagement, because folks really liked the cleric targets. So yeah, so that's all in the works, and it's no ETA on any of that. It's just that's firmly, there are certain things in H3 that are in the category of it will take as long as it takes, and I'm in no rush, because the design work comes out better when I take my time and take long breaks from it to just think about it and see how inspiration strikes me while I work on the sort of technical nitty-gritty that just needs to be ground forward. So, well, with that, I am going to leave you here. As I said, there is not necessarily going to be there's not going to be a beta push tonight. I need to do too many things. I don't have enough time to do it. But sometime next week, if you're using the beta branch, there will be an update to it. I'll post on the Steam forums and on the H3 subreddit when that happens. It'll be a big download because I'm going to be shifting the asset bundles into a different structure, and Steam will have to re-download them. But once that happens, and folks have downloaded it, I'm going to do a test where I try to make a couple like 5 megabyte changes basically and see if Steam diffs it properly the way it did back when I was doing things terribly and had everything in Unity's resources folder. So yeah, that's about everything. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see y'all soon. Peace.